Sarah's hands trembled as she stared at the empty shelf where Lily had sat for 23 years. The porcelain doll with the cracked smile and glassy blue eyes was gone, vanished without explanation from the locked display case in her grandmother's study. The brass key still hung around Sarah's neck, cold against her skin, just as it had every day since the funeral 6 months ago. But it wasn't just the missing doll that made her blood run cold. It was the child-size handprints pressed into the dust where Lily once stood, and the faint scent of lavender that filled the air, the same perfume her grandmother had worn, the same scent that had clung to Lily's tiny dress all those years ago. Sarah's breath caught in her throat as she noticed something else. A single tear track running down the glass, as if someone or something had been crying. Her rational mind screamed that dolls don't disappear on their own, that grief was playing tricks on her perception. But deep down, in the shadowed corners of her memory, she knew this was only the beginning of a psychological thriller that would unravel everything she thought she knew about her family's dark secrets. The police officer's dismissive tone echoed in Sarah's mind as she sat alone in the dimly lit study surrounded by her grandmother's antique collection. "Probably just misplaced it during the move," he had said, not bothering to look up from his notepad. But Sarah knew better. She had been the only one with access to this room, and Lily hadn't been moved since her grandmother's death. The doll had been a fixture in this house for as long as Sarah could remember, a twisted story her grandmother had told her about a gift from a traveling merchant purchased to keep a lonely child company. Now, as shadows lengthened across the hardwood floor, Sarah found herself questioning everything. Had her grandmother's stories about Lily been more than just tales to frighten a curious child? The memories felt different now, tinged with an eerie significance that made her skin crawl. She approached the display case again, her reflection distorted in the glass, and noticed something that made her heart skip. Tiny scratch marks on the inside of the case, as if someone had been trying to claw their way out. Sleep eluded Sarah that night. Every creak of the old house seemed amplified. Every shadow appeared to move with purposeful intent. At 3:17 a.m., she found herself standing in the study again, drawn by an inexplicable pull she couldn't resist. The moonlight streaming through the curtains cast everything in silver and black, creating a world that felt both familiar and alien. That's when she heard it, a soft, childlike humming coming from somewhere within the walls. The melody was hauntingly familiar, the same lullaby her grandmother used to sing when Sarah was young, but her grandmother was dead, and Sarah was alone in the house. The humming grew louder, more insistent, seeming to come from the very floorboards beneath her feet. With trembling hands, Sarah pressed her ear to the wall behind the display case. The humming stopped abruptly, replaced by a silence so complete it felt suffocating. Then, barely audible, came the sound of tiny footsteps and a whispered voice. "Sarah, why did you let them take me away?" The voice was young, innocent, and terrifyingly familiar. It was her own voice, but from decades past. The next morning brought no relief, only more questions that gnawed at Sarah's sanity. She found herself in the local library, desperately searching through old newspaper archives for any mention of the doll or her grandmother's past. The librarian, Mrs. Henderson, watched her with concerned eyes as Sarah frantically scrolled through decades of records. "Looking for something specific, dear?" Mrs. Henderson asked, her voice gentle but probing. Sarah hesitated, then showed her a faded photograph of Lily she had found in her grandmother's jewelry box. The older woman's face paled instantly, and she glanced around nervously before leaning closer. "I remember that doll," she whispered. "Your grandmother brought it to the library once, years ago, said she was researching its history. But Sarah, that's not what troubled me. It was the way she spoke about it, like it was alive. She claimed it had belonged to a little girl who died in this town 50 years ago, a child who looked exactly like you did at that age." The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. Her grandmother had never mentioned any resemblance, any connection between her and the doll's supposed original owner. That evening, Sarah discovered her grandmother's hidden journal tucked behind a loose floorboard in the study. The leather-bound book felt warm to the touch, as if it had been recently handled. Her grandmother's spidery handwriting filled page after page with increasingly erratic entries about Lily, about dreams where the doll came alive, about a growing obsession that had consumed her final years. One entry, dated just weeks before her grandmother's death, made Sarah's blood freeze. "She's getting stronger. I can feel her presence growing, feeding off the family connection. Sarah must never know the truth about what happened to little Emma, about why Lily chose our bloodline. The doll isn't just a vessel, it's a prison, and the lock is weakening." Sarah's hands shook as she read further. Emma. The name appeared repeatedly throughout the journal, always in connection with Lily, always with a sense of growing dread. According to her grandmother's increasingly frantic entries, Emma had been a distant relative who had died under mysterious circumstances in the 1970s. The doll had appeared in their family's possession shortly after Emma's death, and with it came a series of unexplained phenomena that had plagued each generation of women in their bloodline. The mind-bending realization struck Sarah like lightning. She had been having dreams about a little girl named Emma her entire life, dreams she had dismissed as childhood imagination, dreams where she played with a sad little girl who looked exactly like her but dressed in old-fashioned clothes. In these dreams, the girl would always beg Sarah not to leave her alone, not to let them put her back in the dark place. Now, as Sarah stared at her grandmother's journal, those dreams took on a terrifying meaning. She was the unreliable narrator of her own story. Her mind had suppressed the truth to protect her from a reality too twisted to accept. The journal revealed that every woman in their family had experienced similar dreams, similar visitations, similar psychological deterioration as they aged. But Sarah was different. According to her grandmother's final entry, Sarah was the first to inherit not just the dreams, but Emma's actual appearance. "She looks exactly like Emma did at that age," the entry read. "I fear what this means. I fear what Emma wants from her. I fear that this time the doll won't just disappear, it will take Sarah with it." The plot twist came at midnight when Sarah discovered the hidden room behind the study's bookshelf. Inside, she found dozens of photographs spanning decades, all showing the same little girl, all showing her at different ages, all showing her standing next to different versions of the same porcelain doll. But the most disturbing discovery was the final photograph, a recent picture of Sarah herself, taken while she slept, with Lily sitting on her nightstand. Sarah's rational mind struggled to process what she was seeing. Had her grandmother been taking these photos? Had someone else been in the house? The photographs told a story that defied logic. They showed Emma aging, growing older in each image, while the doll remained constant. In the final photos, Emma looked exactly like Sarah did now, and in the very last image, Emma was gone, leaving only the doll behind. The psychological implications were staggering. Was Emma real, or was she a manifestation of generational trauma passed down through the family? Was the doll truly haunted, or was Sarah experiencing a complete psychological breakdown?
The line between reality and delusion had become so blurred that Sarah could no longer trust her own perceptions.
As Sarah stood in the hidden room, surrounded by evidence of decades of supernatural activity, she felt her grip on reality slipping away. The walls seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy, and the air grew thick with the scent of lavender and something else, something that smelled like earth and decay. That's when she saw her, Emma, standing in the corner of the room, translucent and shimmering like heat waves rising from summer pavement. She looked exactly as she had in Sarah's dreams, but now her eyes held a desperate hunger that made Sarah's soul recoil in terror. "You finally understand," Emma whispered, her voice echoing from multiple directions at once. "The doll was never the prison, it was the key. Each generation, one of us gets to leave, to live, to experience the world. But someone has to stay behind to keep the cycle alive. Your grandmother understood this. She chose to protect you for as long as she could." Sarah's mind reeled as Emma stepped closer, her form becoming more solid with each word. "But now it's time for you to choose, Sarah. You can take my place, live my life, become me. Or you can join me in the space between worlds and let someone else inherit this burden." The moral dilemma tore at Sarah's sanity as she realized the full scope of her situation. Emma wasn't just a ghost, she was a psychological construct born from generations of trauma, a manifestation of every woman in their family who had sacrificed their identity to protect the next generation. The doll was merely a focal point, a physical anchor for something far more complex and terrifying. Sarah's reflection in the room's mirror showed not her own face, but Emma's, young, innocent, and desperate. She understood now why her grandmother had hidden the truth, why each generation had chosen to bear this burden alone. The psychological toll of knowing that your identity, your very existence, was built on someone else's sacrifice was unbearable. But Sarah also realized that she had a choice her predecessors didn't. She could break the cycle. The journal had mentioned a way to sever the connection, to free both herself and Emma from this twisted story that had played out for decades. It required a sacrifice, but not of identity or life. It required the courage to face the truth about what had created this haunted legacy in the first place. The climax came as Sarah made her decision. With trembling hands, she gathered all the photographs, the journal, and the brass key, and carried them to the fireplace in the study. As she prepared to burn everything, Emma's form became more solid, more real, until she stood before Sarah as if she were truly alive. "You don't understand," Emma pleaded, her voice now carrying the weight of decades of loneliness and desperation. "If you destroy those, we both disappear. The family ends with us. There will be no more dreams, no more protection, no more connection to the past." Sarah looked at Emma, really looked at her, and saw not a monster or a ghost, but a scared little girl who had been trapped in a cycle of psychological trauma for 50 years. Maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe it's time for both of us to find peace. As the flames consumed the photographs and journal, Emma's form began to fade. But instead of the terror Sarah expected to see, Emma's face showed relief, pure, overwhelming relief. The doll, wherever it had disappeared to, crumbled to dust in some unseen realm, and with it, the dark secrets that had haunted their family for generations finally came to an end. The house fell silent for the first time in decades, free from the weight of supernatural presence and generational trauma. Sarah emerged from her psychological thriller forever changed,
understanding that sometimes the most twisted stories are the ones we tell ourselves to survive unbearable truths. But here's what haunts me about this mind-bending story. Was Sarah's choice truly heroic, or did she condemn future generations to face this cycle without any protection? Was Emma real, or was she a manifestation of Sarah's own fractured psyche? The beauty of psychological thrillers lies in their ability to leave us questioning the nature of reality itself. What do you think happened to the doll? Do you believe Emma was truly freed, or did Sarah simply break under the pressure of her family's dark secrets? Share your theories in the comments below. I love hearing your interpretations of these twisted stories. If this tale of unreliable narrators and psychological mystery left you questioning your own perceptions, smash that like button and subscribe for more stories that will unravel the threads of reality. There are more dark secrets to be discovered, more plot twists that will leave you haunted long after the video ends. Until next time, stay kind, stay sharp, and stay curious.